Welcome to Map Crow, the RPG art show. My name is Kyle, and today we're answering your questions. To celebrate the unfathomable amount of support that we have, 50,000 subscribers, we are going to be answering some of your questions. Now, I can't get to all of them. Some of them are similar, so I'm going to lump them together. Other kinds of questions that were asked would actually just be better video topics. And some of them I really don't have great answers to, so I'm going to skip those. So let's start off with our first question. What is the origin of the Map Crow name? So when I first started the channel, I was just using my normal name. This is not a secret. I say my name is Kyle at the beginning of every episode. My last name is Latino, which is confusing to some people because it is an Italian name and I do not appear to be Latino in any way that people commonly recognize. So I just wanted to pick a title that would be easy to remember. I knew if I just picked two one-syllable words that vaguely describe what I'm about, that would be good enough, and I would almost immediately start to hate them, so I shouldn't really bother overthinking it. And all of these things have been true, and the channel really began to take off because I think it has an easy to remember name, among other things. That's not all of it. Our next question is, what does the video making process look like for you? This is going to be probably a little weird. A lot of people write out scripts ahead of time. I do not. I will record whatever kind of art making process, whatever kind of visual thing that I want to do first, and then I will decide what I am going to say about it as I am editing that footage. I have a stutter and I use lots of filler words as I am talking to people. So I do a lot of editing and record a lot of takes if I need to make sure that I'm staying succinct and saying what I want to say and that it is listenable. So it is a lot of work, even though it's not a lot of typing ahead of time. Our next question is, are there cartographers you admire within the TTRPG scene? And the answer is yes. And it is one of the reasons that I enjoy cartography so much is because there are so many incredible artists in this scene. It keeps me going. It really lights my fire to see the work of my colleagues and really gets me back interested in making images and designing games that would be worthy of the attention of my colleagues. But here are a few in no particular order at all. My man, my brother, JP Couvert, the living mystery that is Skull Fungus, the world-class Francesca Berald, the epically isometric Alex Drummo, the gnarled monstrosity Alex Damasino, the peculiar pathfinder Nicholas Wested, Fernando Salvaterra, who I remember as being very kind and supportive when I first started posting maps, the ever trilemic Michael Prescott, who is probably one of the earliest map makers I learned the name of, and then the exquisitely detailed work of Chloe the cartographer. And I can't believe I almost forget the bearded devil himself, Jonathan Newell. This is just scratching the surface, and I really hate to make a list because I don't want to leave anyone out, but we'll be here the rest of the day if I don't just move on. But I will mention Michael the Impractical Cartographer. Can't forget him. Our next question is, what is next for the channel? And the answer is probably a lot more of the same, but also I really want to turn building better monsters into a book. So that process and more videos about more monsters is likely a big part of what is going to be coming next. I think something else that is becoming increasingly obvious is that I want to put more time into this channel and more time into art that I own. And that means being more guarded with my time and being more careful about commercial collaborations and focus on projects that I can really hang my hat on. Our next question is, if you had to recommend books or other sorts of literary fictions that have inspired how you play your game, which ones would they be? I have also gotten a couple of questions about what my Appendix N would be. And this is so thought-provoking that we actually just finished recording an episode of my podcast, The Splat Book. Look in the description below for a link. And we John and I built our own kind of Appendix N. So that episode is going to come out at the end of the week, but in the meantime, I'll just simply mention a couple of things that I think really influenced the way that I think about fantasy in my games. So first of all, the movie Krull from 1983. Mike Schell's novel, The Aching God, from 2018, is a wonderful dark fantasy novel. Delicious in Dungeon is a wonderful manga by Ryoko Kui, and probably has my favorite dwarf in literary history in it. The video game Loom from 1990, designed by Brian Moriarty, and Gideon the Ninth from 2019, a novel by Tamsin Muir. And we go into much more detail on all of these in the podcast. In the interest of time, I will just let that list suffice. Our next question is, what got you interested in art originally? And going way, way back to when I was a kid, honestly, I just got a lot of positive reinforcement. I think that's so important, to have people around you seeing you make your very first marks who applaud that and celebrate every little thing that you do. That kind of positive attention allows you to prioritize your efforts in a way. And this is why, as an educator, I'm very, very cautious about, coming down with critical thoughts about people's work before I have earned their trust and built the space to get into, where some of the weaknesses may lie. Because I think all art is something that we should celebrate, because it's so, so hard to do. And without those early positive experiences, I honestly doubt I would have stuck with it. Our next question is, how long have you been practicing to be able to draw professionally? And I think I understand what this question is asking, but I'm going to answer it literally and then try to give the answer from a different angle. I never thought of needing to practice to become a professional, because I come from comic books originally, and in that place you just kind of self-publish until you make something that strikes a chord and people want to hire you to do more of it. As important as it is to practice drawing well, if you want to sell drawings professionally, it is just as important to practice selling things and putting things out there, and having the bravery and resilience to stand behind your work in a self-publishing format. So in that case, I didn't practice to become an artist. I just was an artist and put things out. And I started on that journey when I graduated college with a religion and literature degree in 2007, and worked for years and years on drawing comics. And when you're drawing comics, you have to learn to draw everything. You have to draw expressions, character designs, you have to convey emotion and narrative, and you have to draw backgrounds. And this is really important. So, and that is, I think, a lot of the skills that I use as an illustrator and a cartographer, I learned by trying to tell my own stories and collaborate with writers to tell their stories. But after I had my graphic novel, The Savage Beard of She-Dwarf, published at Oni Press a few years ago, I felt like I just didn't have it in me to continue to grind on producing original content in an industry that is really designed to sell, Captain America and Green Lantern comics. So I switched gears over to tabletop RPGs. Our next question is a really important one. How do you handle burnout? And the answer is simple, but it does require a little bit of unpacking. What is burnout, and what is just not wanting to work particularly much on any given day? Frequently, I don't feel like drawing or working on videos or, working on lessons for class. But once I get started, I feel like doing it, because doing it makes me happy. So that is really easy to solve, but that's not burnout. Burnout is when you grow to hate the thing that used to bring you joy, probably because you are doing it in an unsustainable or unhealthy way. And that is particularly complicated and galling because you are not always in control of the features of your workflow that are unhealthy or unsustainable. Sometimes you're in school and unsustainable and unhealthy practices are mandated to achieve the grade and the degree you want. Sometimes you have to put in, a 40-hour-a-week job that is grueling and then come home and try to do your work in that environment. And that's not necessarily something you can control. But whatever your situation is, the answer is not just to, grit your teeth and keep working. That is just going to continue to cause you more pain, just as it would if you were trying to finish a marathon on a broken ankle. It's a bad idea. If it's just for a limited time, maybe you can grit your teeth and get through it, but if you can rearrange your circumstance, negotiate for a longer deadline, communicate your needs and your health with the people that you're working with and putting such demands on you, do so. Sometimes you're going to find yourself in such dire straits that you're going to need therapy or medication of some kind to get through it, as I have at several points in my life. And it's important to take advantage of those resources and surround yourself with people who care about you and love you for more than just what you produce. Your worth is never going to come from just one thing, whether it's a job or a project or something you do for other people. It's not a transactional situation. You are worthy of a healthy and happy life that is full of love, no matter who you are. And unfortunately, the art world is full of people who will say the exact opposite, and I think that's disgusting. And sometimes you step out there and you renegotiate and you try to explain your needs and rearrange your life, but it's still just not enough. You're not able to get the time and the energy you want to do the thing that you said you wanted to do once upon a time. And it's time to take a long, hard look at that thing that you were talking about doing and say, does that match the life that I actually have? And if it doesn't, change the thing into something that fits the scale, that fits the room that you have in your life. That is the exact circumstance that became MapCrow. I had just gone through a lot in my life and finished grad school, and I thought I would never pick up a pencil again. And I took a 3x3 corner of my room and I set up my drawing table again, which I had almost thrown into the dumpster because I thought I would never use it again. And I started drawing maps and sharing them with people online and scaling up little by little to something that I'm really happy that I invested in. But the fact that I was able to work on smaller projects and get positive feedback on that a little bit at a time in my life I didn't have very much like physical or emotional room for making art, is what saved my interest in the arts to begin with. So I speak from experience. And I continue to make all of my videos and all of my art and all of my illustration while also having a full-time teaching load. So, this is not a situation where it's like, oh, it's easy for you to say because you're a full-time artist. But, this is something I continue to live with. So what do you do about burnout? You find rest and then let the art find you again. Because if it really brings you joy, you won't be able to stop. Be happy. Be healthy in your life before you start figuring out how to make stuff that makes you happy. Make space in your life for happiness to exist. That's what to do about burnout. Our next question is, how has your cartography changed your experience with D&D? And I think this is a really interesting question. Because at first, it kind of ruined D&D for me a little bit. Because I felt like if I wasn't bringing like grade A commercial grade assets to my game, I was doing something less than. But the fact is I don't have time to do these kind of commercial grade maps for my home game. It just will never happen. But what I realized eventually was that I was now more aware of the kinds of things that were actually important. What was the minimum viable product version of what I was doing in my commercial practice? And that really changed things and opened up a lot of doors. Like that video that I put up not too long ago about making instant city maps and that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff I do for my game. And that has really changed how I prep for games and how I am able to run more rhizomatic sandboxy games a lot more easily by making certain kinds of environments or choices more obvious. To show the pieces of the world on the table in front of my players allows them to play with more game state transparency than they would if I just sent them to an ongoing lore wiki. I find that kind of information to be not as useful and somewhat flatter and not as accessible or easy to use at the game table. And just to be clear, this is better for me, but I don't know that this would work well for anybody else. And when I make any video, I'm not suggesting that you actually change things. I'm just bringing you tools that I find useful or interesting. I get this feeling, well, I'm worried that I have, 50,000 subscribers, and I'm worried that a good number of them think of me as some kind of like authority on GMing, and I don't think I'm actually that good of a GM or any better than anybody else. I just think that I enjoy it, and I enjoy talking about it. So sometimes when I get some questions that are asking me for like GM tips or something like that, I really don't know how to answer them, because it may not even be like something I've ever thought of before. This is an art channel. This isn't necessarily like, a GM advice channel. So if I didn't get to your question, it was about like, what to do about this in your game or whatever. It's like, I probably don't have a very good answer to it, because I run a very different game than you might be running. Our next question is, what's the secret to solid game design? And the answer is playtesting. Because game design, and just like any art making, is never about sitting and thinking about something for a long, long time until you come up with the perfect answer, and then you just execute that perfect answer perfectly the first time. That's just never, ever how it works. Anytime you are making a game, you're probably making some kind of procedure to overcome some kind of obstacle with a specific kind of process or subsystem. So define those obstacles, define those processes, and get that in front of people playing it and getting feedback. See how people are developing strategies and relationships with those obstacles and processes and verbs as soon as you can, and then make decisions with that information, as opposed to collecting all the correct answers and then passing that off as design. I frequently get asked questions from students and emerging artists that are just like, it essentially boils down to this question: how do I make only the good decisions and none of the bad decisions? And that just ain't how making stuff works. You're always going to make mistakes. And in fact, the anxiety about making those mistakes and the avoidance of doing things that might be a mistake is worse to your process than making the mistakes you're so afraid of. Anybody who says they got the secret to making art out there is trying to sell you a book that's probably called something like The Secret to Making Art. Making stuff is hard work, and it's an iterative process. There is no shortcut to making something that many people will love. It's just a lot of work. Our next question is, what medium do you most want to pick up or improve at right now? And gosh, the answer is everything. That's the thing I love about art, is it's something I can continue to improve at and put time into for the rest of my life. But as far as what mediums, I've never really painted as much as I have recently. And I really enjoy doing that for the Building Better Monsters videos. I would love to learn printmaking, screen printing soon. It looks like I will be able to do that soon if I could just carve out the time for it. The thing that I would love to do but absolutely don't have any time for is 3D modeling. I would love to make 3D printed miniatures of some of my characters. I think that would just be so rewarding. But that also seems like it has the least transferable skills to what I actually know how to do right now. So that one's gonna take a while, if ever. But never say never. Our next question is, what skills do you recommend learning or practicing for artists who are either starting out or at the novice level? And again, remember, I am a self-taught artist. One of the reasons I'm so happy with my work is because I didn't have a bunch of people meddling with it and trying to tell me what my creative priorities ought to have been at certain points. I was free to just grow in the things that I thought were important and I was curious about doing better with. For my illustration students, I would frequently see that there was a lot of time and attention paid to drawing faces and characters, eyeballs, and hands, and not really a lot of time focused on drawing complete compositions, and not a lot of time drawing like environments and backgrounds with linear perspective. So if that's kind of where this is going, then yeah, practice drawing environments in perspective. I think that is going to help improve all of your drawing, all of your art making, and not just your backgrounds. But also, that is the stuff that nobody wants to practice. So if you do that thing well, it is going to distinguish you from your peers who are not as driven to hone those skills. But honestly, I just say follow your curiosity. Try to, look at the stuff you're already looking at. Look at the stuff that you already love and think is amazing. Try to, look up as much information you can about how that thing was made or how that artist works. Try to reverse engineer every step of the process that led to the creation of the thing that you're looking at. The thing that keeps people making stuff and making better stuff is curiosity and the ability to find joy in the making. If you can be curious and be joyful in your making, you will continue to improve, and you will also be making something that is interesting and enjoyable. Be critical. Look slowly and closely at the artists that inspire you and understand what it is exactly that they're doing. You cannot just simply appreciate things as a reader or a fan if you're trying to learn from them. And this means treating it very differently and trying to backwards engineer how the magic trick is actually done in the first place. And then practice doing that magic trick yourself and be honest about the results. Be honest in your comparison. There's a lot of kind of flimsy wisdom out there that says, don't compare yourself to others. You have to, in order to grow, in order to do things differently, you have to compare yourself to other people in that way. And that can be a hard thing to do, but it is essential. If you want different results, you need different methods, and you gain different methods by studying others closely and being critical about their work and your work. I think that will just about do it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you everybody who submitted questions for me to answer. I know I didn't get to all of them, but I kind of explained why. And there's just a bunch of questions I didn't actually feel very qualified or had like good answers for, so I apologize for if you feel like I skipped over yours, but I hope I've made my position clear. In any case, thank you so much for subscribing. 50,000. I really can't believe it. And I will see you next time. So until then, my friends, farewell.